This is a duck. No. This is a duck. Oh my gosh, I guess I have to be more specific. This is Sonic ducking in Sonic 2. And this is Sonic spin dashing in Sonic 2. Now, what do these have in common? The answer is, you have to press down to do either of these things. So, I wanted to know, what was the game like without this button? So today, we're doing a challenge where I have to play through all of Sonic 2 and I cannot press down. So, let's go over some rules. Obviously, we're not going to press down. That's immediately off the table. Which means no ducking and no spin dashing. Now, if you've ever played Sonic 2, you know that spin dashing is the best acceleration method in the game. Without that, it's going to be hard to get over some obstacles. And to make this challenge more unique, we're going to not do any of the special stages and not use Supersonic at all, just so that we can keep it true to the nature of the game. Using Supersonic would trivialize a few of the levels because he can jump so high and move so fast anyway. Also, an additional concern is that without the use of down, we are wildly unprotected, because without down, the only way to get into a ball, which is how you defeat most of the enemies, is by jumping. So any fast sections, we cannot use down and go into a ball, which I'm sure will cause some chaos, shall we say, as we sprint into many enemies without being in a ball. One more special thing to note is that we are playing on the Sonic Origins version of the game. This is just to give me unlimited lives so that I can tell you if the challenge is possible without dying a million times and losing a bunch of lives and having to play through it over and over and over again. Our adventure begins in Emerald Hill Zone, Zone 1. Now, just a reminder, we can't press down or duck. So to start off, I just want to show you one of the enemies, this monkey guy who just snipes you with the coconuts while you're playing. And then, other than that, there's not much that happened in this level notable. Obviously, we can't go back over this loop once we've gone one way, because we don't have enough speed and we can't spin dash to get any speed. But other than that, the level finished, post-haste, with no issues. With Zone 1 done, we come to Zone 2, which houses our first boss we'll be facing. But first, I just wanted to show you that the loops are going really slow without the ability to press down, because it's really hard to get some speed. And we ran into a problem where we couldn't get into a ball and couldn't do anything. And obviously this hill took a little bit too much to get over. But before too long, we get to the boss, and this one's pretty simple to take out. You just jump on him, and he's already beaten. We free the animals, and we go to our next zone, or our next act, Chemical Plant. So now that we're done with Emerald Hill Zone, we come to Chemical Plant, which, in my opinion, has the best soundtrack in the entire game. Now to start out, it's pretty easy, but we come to these volcano enemies, which are no problem if you have a spin dash, like you see here. But in this run, obviously we don't. And we can't get up this hill without some momentum, so we have to go into harm's way. And these guys are pretty precarious because I can't really kill them because they strike from above. But with our iframes, we use the momentum and we get over it. Now, that's the only really notable thing that happened in this level, so we're on to Act 2. Now, we move to Act 2, which has one of the most notorious water sections in any level. But before we get there, there's these boxes that normally I would just spin dash and get into, and I tried to figure out a way to get them through jumping, but I could not figure it out. And I don't think it's possible without spin dashing. Here's the water section I mentioned. We do get the drowning timer for just a second, but we get out with no problems, and then the only other thing that really happens is we fight the boss. So once we get through this drowning, we get to the boss, and this is, in my opinion, the hardest boss in the game. But there's nothing not being able to press down related hard about it, so we'll just speed through it. We take a little bit of damage, but before too long, Eggman's dead. Well, his machine is dead. We free all the creatures here, and we're on to the next zone. With Eggman defeated in Chemical Plant, we move to our next act, Aquatic Ruin, which is notorious for just being a water level. Now, if we had down there, we could have killed that enemy pretty easy, but otherwise nothing else happened in Zone 1, and we move on to Zone 2. So, in Act 2, we unfortunately have our first death, just to foreshadow. Now, normally I would spin dash and get a little bit of speed to outrun those arrows, but we do come to this pillar, which I cannot get through because we can't press down. And I test around for a little bit, and I find out that if you jump on top of it, it falls. But as you can see, we are running out of time, and unfortunately, Sonic meets his demise right here. Now, in our second run, I took a different path. I took the top path, and it was much easier. However, we come to this point where there's one that you can't get up without some momentum. Luckily, there's a spring that saves us. Other than that, though, all that's left is to take damage because we can't get into a ball twice, and then we fight the boss. Now, this boss you can cheese a little bit by getting on these pillars like I did, and just bouncing back and forth and hitting Eggman. So, before too long, we deliver the final blow, and all that's left is to wait for him to leave the screen and release the woodland creatures. Now, with that act done, we move on to Act 4. Now, let me welcome you to Casino Night, and this one might be one of the more unique levels. So, first we take our second death. These are the only 2 deaths, but there are these sections that I've showed you where you enter a forced ball. I'm not pressing down to get in there, but figured I'd call it out. This happens a bunch of times. So, part of the problem is obviously we can't build up any momentum, so anytime we find ourselves in a pit, like we were a second ago, we have to figure out another way out. Luckily in that one, there was a cubby to save us. Now, with Act 1 done, we move straight into Act 2, and there's that unique enemy I was telling you about earlier here, right at the beginning. So if you see this guy, you can't actually defeat them without a spin dash like you see here, so we can't defeat any of those. And there's a couple more of those forced ball sections where it forces you into a ball, and then we go on the most insane gambling streak I've ever seen. So we get a lot of rings, we immediately go again, we lose all of our rings, and then you wouldn't believe it. We go one more time, perfect jackpot. So after that, I decided it was probably time to quit gambling, and then we find ourselves in another pit that's kind of difficult to get out of without building some momentum, and Tails is just showing off at this point. So unfortunately, we get back there, we have to try again, and once we get there, we get through it, there's another force ball section, and all that's left is to fight this boss. Now this boss is kind of unique because normally you just use a spin dash technique to kill it, like you're seeing here. This is how I would normally do it, but obviously spin dashing is off the table. Now, as you can see, I do just kind of do the same spin dashing strategy. I run up the wall, try to jump, but it does eventually start working like there. I lose a bunch of rings, but that's fine. So I decide to play it, I think that's the intended way, and then I make the worst mistake of my life. The world slows down, and I realize I'm muscle memory spin dashing. Then I waited for a while, and I decided, what's the best way to remedy this? So I restarted the level, because that felt like a good enough death. Defeated the boss again, and now I feel like we can release the creatures and beat the level. So, trials and tribulations. 1 death, 1 spin dash, but we made up for it. Now we move on to Hilltop Zone, which I love this level. However, they are great at putting hills at the start that are hard to get over. There's some more forced ball sections, and right there, if we had spin dash, we could have done this. Now, these loops are tricky. Tails is going to demonstrate how you're supposed to do it here. You're supposed to spin dash and then use your spin dash to break those. Now, obviously, without down, we can't really do any of that, but we got through because Tails saved us on that one. There's a little bit of an eruption, followed by a forced ball, and then that's the end of Act 1. Now, in Act 2, we have a little bit of trouble right at the start. It doesn't look like it, because you have just enough momentum to get over. There's a forced ball, and then another one of these loops. Now this one, I was trying forever to get Tails to do the same thing that he did. I tried over and over again, and eventually I accidentally jumped, and I was like, maybe if you jumped into it, that worked perfectly. So now, there's another volcano eruption. However, this one you kind of have to stay ahead of the lava, and there are a star power-up to help you, which we find, and then we managed to get out, followed immediately by one of the weirdest looking sections, like land-wise, but we get through that. It's time for the boss. Now Tails is doing some crazy damage here. Tails is like hitting him like there's no tomorrow. We kill the boss, we move on. You already know how it goes. Now we are moving on to Zone 6. We still have not needed to press down for anything. So these next 2 worlds, the Mystic Cave and Oil Ocean, I didn't have a lot in my notes. There was not a whole ton that not being able to spin dash or duck really did. I mean, Tails griefs you a little bit by jumping on bridges and stuff, but otherwise there's not much here. So, Mystic Cave Zone 1 complete. And with Mystic Cave 1 done, it's time to move on to Mystic Cave 2. Now, once again, same kind of thing. There's not really much to show you here that was made difficult by not being able to press down. So, forgive me for a little bit of the generic play, but we get to the boss. We die immediately. This boss, I normally have Supersonic by this point, so the fact that we're not using Supersonic either makes it a little difficult. But all in a day's work, we get through that. Tails and I defeat Eggman for the, 6th time now? We free the woodland creatures, and it's on to the 7th zone, Oil Ocean. So, Oil Ocean, same kind of deal as Mystic Cave. There's not a ton to show you here besides these enemies being really annoying. These octopus guys specifically, they like to fling projectiles. Now, here I have a little bit of a skill issue, but normally, you would be able to gain enough momentum if you had Supersonic to get up there, but Supersonic's not part of this challenge, so obviously we can't. But there's nothing too horrible in the act. So, moving on to Act 2, and this is where the boss is. Overall, once again, nothing really major from not being able to press down. So not much to show here, other than me dying to a bunch of projectile-based enemies. That's kind of what Oil Ocean specializes in, projectile-based enemies. Now, we have one of the more boring fights in my opinion, because you can only hit him like 2 or 3 times, as you can see. You can only hit him 2 or 3 times whenever he comes up. But after enough time, we finish him off, and Tails kind of gets an underwater shot there, which is crazy. We free the woodland creatures. You already know how it goes. After we free the woodland creatures, it's on to the only act with 3 zones. Now, as the only act with 3 zones, Metropolis stands out among most of the other zones, mostly because it has the most annoying enemies. That is the weirdest behavior I've ever seen. We found ourselves at the bottom of pits a few times and had to use some momentum to get up. The problem is we had to get to that spring to get into that line of springs, and then we've got another time where we've got a loop that's a little difficult. Normally you could just spin dash there. Obviously we can't. So I get some momentum, and then we can get up it with no big deal. Now Metropolis is full of these screws, and Tails always just stands there instead of helping me wind them. This level has its own kind of forced ball sections that you just saw, which are those like teleporter things. And then I wanted to leave that grasshopper hitting me in there because we couldn't get up this loop and it caused us to repeat like half the level. But even with that repeat, nothing really interesting happened, so it's on to Zone 2. Now, after Act 1's done, we move to Act 2. So this one is full of some of the most frustrating enemies, like this grasshopper who just decides to randomly kill me, or maybe it's a praying mantis. And there's another box here, like we had in the second world, where I had to jump into. Risk of getting crushed, but the shield was worth it. And we have one of the most insane clips ever right there. So I couldn't have gotten up that hill on my own, but that star hit me in such a way where I could get up it right at the end. And then we have one of the most painstaking things about this. So you have to go up this wall and then jump on that platform, which normally is no problem if you can gain enough momentum through spin dashing. And as you can see, I tried over and over and over again until I finally got lucky and finished it. And then immediately, right above it, I saw another thing that was the exact same. However, this one had a wall, so it wasn't too bad to get over. But I would still love some momentum from a spin dash. But with that, the level's over, and we move on to the boss level. Now, welcome to Metropolis Zone 3. This one, full of some force balls with the teleporters, full of some enemies that are frustrating, and then another section that was like the one we just had, where you have to jump. But this one wasn't too bad because it was a little bit more forgiving. That one, just a skill issue. After 2 forced balls, though, it is time for the boss battle. Now, this one is one of the more fun boss battles, in my opinion. You can kind of sell out and get hit for a chance to just hit Eggman with your iframes. So we kind of skipped a lot of that. There wasn't anything too interesting. But after we pop the last bubble, he tries to fire some lasers at us, but we get through. We free the woodland creatures, and the game's coming to a close, and we haven't had to use down for anything, so I'm pretty hopeful. With Metropolis completed, we come to Sky Chase Zone, which this one is interesting because we cannot go down once we've gone back up, except for doing this jump mechanic that I just showed you a bunch of times. So as you jump, and as you continue to jump, you can get Tails to go a little bit down, which is the only way we can go down. So I spent a lot of this just holding the jump button over and over again so that we could go down, and nothing really interesting happened other than that little minutia. Now, something that is frustrating is halfway through the level, Eggman pulls up with his monster airship. And I believe the airship's called the Wing Fortress. We'll see that in a bit. But it forces Tails to fly the plane up. So even you can see I'm trying to go down and it's not letting me. But once the plane's off the screen, we don't have any more problems with that. And the rest of the level's pretty much a breeze. And we've come to Wing Fortress Zone. Now, normally when you have Supersonic, this place is basically trivialized, but this houses some of the toughest parkour, of which this is one of my least favorite jumps, because if you don't grab that bar exactly right, it is super hard to get onto the floating platforms that you're supposed to get on afterwards. But I did it first try, lucky me. I was not so fortunate when I was a child playing this game. Otherwise, pretty simple. Most of this is just you're going up. Now, this section is interesting though. Normally you would press up and down to get these rings. Obviously we can't press down, but luckily it's not needed to survive. After that, we come to the boss. Now, this is one of the harder boss battles in the game, in my opinion, and normally you have Supersonic here. So Eggman exposes this laser, and then he gives you things like that to shoot on it. Now we lose a lot of our rings early. And at the end, we're about to lose our last ring. We collect it though. And I am selling out. I just want this battle to be over. Somehow we managed to do it with one ring. Normally I don't have many rings at the end. But Eggman takes his, I guess, fighter jet, whatever it is. He takes it to space. We follow him, we grab on, and just like that, we are in space with Dr. Eggman. And we are finally ready to fight his final machines. So, come along, we're about to do the final Death Egg Zone. Now, we've come to the Death Egg Zone, housing Metal Sonic and Dr. Eggman's big machine. I've left the entire Metal Sonic battle in here because personally I'm very proud of it. This is the fastest I think I've ever done it, and I was very proud of how that Metal Sonic run went. So after that, we chase Eggman down the hall, and he gets into his Dr. Eggman machine, whatever this thing is. Now, this one can be cheesed a little bit. You'll see me do it, so he shifts between two attacks, this walking one and then one where he fires his spiky fists at you. But if you just stand slightly out of range of those attacks, you can just bait him out. So you see that crosshair. He's going to land there right now. So if you just run away when he lands there, hit him, and then you run away while he's attacking, you can just cheese this battle and never get hit. And you don't have to do anything difficult. So after, I don't know, 3 minutes of that, it takes a while. He's got a lot of health points. We deal the last blow, and then we watch the Death Egg Zone explode fully. And we've done it. With Eggman defeated, us free-falling, I think we've come to the answer. Obviously, yes, you can beat Sonic the Hedgehog 2 without pressing down. And there's no real fable, there's no real end to the story, but we've done it. It's a little more annoying, but I don't think there's anything game-changing or game-breaking about it. So, this brings us to the end of the challenge. Thank you so much for watching this. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. If you like this, feel free to leave a like. If you want to see more of me, please subscribe. And if you'd like to see more of me in general, you can always find me on Twitch. I stream there about twice a week. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Bye.